Hey, what's up guys? In this video I'm going to be talking about proper gain staging in Ableton. Now this is very important. It'll save you a lot of headaches down the road, and it's a good practice to go about. So you want your audio to be as close to unity as you can, but without going over. Very important. And unity is 0. So how audio is handled is all relative, and it's in dB, decibels. You know, you can have something at unity, which is at 0, and then you have something like negative 3.4 dB or plus 2.3 dB, etc., etc. So you want to like stage your audio because plugins color and change volume and stuff like that. So you want to compensate for that. So I'll hit play on my little loop here. And pay attention to this number. This number is how much we're peaking. So it's negative 1.37, which is pretty good. Typically, you'd want negative 3 dB of headroom, which is, you know, good standard practice. And yeah, that's for, you know, just for safety's sake. But yeah, let's affect this a bit. We'll just go things that are a little bit chaotic, like a filter. Not chaotic, but you know what I mean. A filter, and we'll add some resonance and some downsample. So, all right, so now this number, I'm clicking on it to reset it. We're over by 3.18. So what we could do is we could just bring that down. But that's not necessarily the best way to go about it, and I'll explain. So if you ever want to render out all your stems, you're going to be doing that pre-fader, so that everything, for when you mix it later, you send it to the mixing engineer, everything is below 0, because above 0, obviously it clips. So you want things to be pre-fader to not be clipping. And you can see these guys right down here. These, I'll actually highlight them for you. So check this, this is my new trick. You got this guy, and this guy. This allows you to see the relative volume as you're entering a particular plugin and as you're exiting, and then entering and then exiting, right? So what we're doing is we're actually clipping into here, which may have been a big deal in the early 2000s. Not so much anymore, but there are some exceptions which I will get into. So a good way to remedy this is to not bring down the fader. I'll just get rid of that. Don't bring down the fader. Add in a fancy schmancy utility, and keep a look at this number here. We're going over by 3 dB, so I'll bring it down by 3.3333, repeating. Right, so now we are properly gain staged, and the reason why it doesn't clip within these plugins, it does, but it's very difficult. But the reason why it doesn't in, you know, like 6 dB over is because Ableton and all modern DAWs that are worth their weight in respect have something called floating point. You know, they use like, it's like floating point. Can't describe it, but what it does is it dynamically adjusts things so that it doesn't clip. I don't know what's going on in a 64-bit floating point in Ableton Live. So that's useful. So when you export things pre-fader for mixing, things are at unity gain. You don't have noise and stuff like that. But here's an example of something where it's like really important to gain stage. And that is using emulations of classic gear, or using classic gear. You actually need to condition the audio in such a way that it's not, you know, you can't blast it. It needs to be reduced a tiny bit. I'll give you an example right now. I'll use the SSL comp by waves. And what's going on here, even if the threshold is all the way up, we still got some gain reduction. So it's a little bit too loud going into it. So we will go into our audio effects and then go into utility and condition the audio so that it doesn't bite, it doesn't go over the threshold. And then from there, I can increase the makeup gain, all the while paying attention to this number. And I can reduce the threshold. We got some nice gluage going on there. All right, and we'll check out our headroom. Headroom is basically the amount of dB that you are below 0. So right now we have 1.1 dB of headroom. You're going to want 3. But yeah, we won't be picky about that. And yeah, if you go over 0, then that would obviously drive the limiter, and that just wouldn't sound too good. You don't want things to go over 0. So that is, I guess, proper gain staging. It saves you a headache down the road, and it's very, very useful to just follow this in practice, and eventually you'll just kind of do it. Because you might get to the point where you're mixing and you have like some of your faders like so loud, and you're just reinforcing a problem that could have been solved with proper gain staging. And if you ever export things pre-fader, you're pretty much effed, in my opinion. You have to go back and all that, and it's not a good time. But yeah, hope you learned stuff. Check out the links in the description, and hope you enjoyed, and have a good one.